So, it's been a while since I've had the opportunity to preach, and so I have 60 some odd slides. Now, the good news is I'm only going to share some of them with you. The rest I'll give to you some other time. But I have a lot of stuff that God kind of downloaded on me, and then I've spent the last several weeks trying to sort out what it is that's supposed to go into the message that I present today. You'll notice that I titled this Journey with Grace. And so when you see that, there's several different ways you can read that. Okay? You can read that as Daniel's journey with grace. You can read that as my journey with grace. You could say that you need to take grace along with you. Or you could say that the journey of grace is a journey. Okay? And I chose this specific way of saying it because I want all of those to be true. My encouragement is that we look at each one of those aspects when we look at this. Now, Amy and I teach several classes when we go on missions trips and things like that. And invariably, when people are listening to the classes that we're teaching, they listen to the part that they think applies to the other person. We teach a lot of marriage classes. And so if you're teaching, let's say the love languages, right? A lot of people focus on, well, you're not fulfilling my needs. Come on now. He's telling you right there, listen to him, right? Or love and respect. You need to be respecting me more. No, you need to be loving me more. That's not what it's about. It's about listening to what is God telling you. Your responsibility is you. When you get to heaven and you're before the judgment seat, there aren't going to be any clauses. There aren't going to be any excuses for why you didn't do a certain thing. Well, so-and-so made it difficult for me, or whatever. That's not the way it works, okay? You're responsible for you. So when you listen today, I encourage you to see if there is something that God is speaking to you, not to the person sitting next to you. So today is either going to be a really good message or a really terrible one, because I've got butterflies going on, which is it's kind of unusual for me. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I had some confirmation today. I saw that Julie put on the front of the bulletin that I will choose to find joy in the journey that God has set before me. And so for me, that was a real confirmation that I was on target with this, because joy is a byproduct of having grace in your life. Now, the fact that I haven't preached in a while means that I kind of need to lay some foundation work with you, because my brain works differently. I think in pictures, I don't think in words. My concepts are actually a fully developed picture that I then have to break into stages to kind of share with you. And I think I've laid all of those foundations in the past, but I know some of you haven't heard me preach in the past, and even if you did, it's been quite a while, so we're going to start with a refresher. But Ephesians tells us that our battle, the struggles that we have in life, are spiritual in nature. Sure, we deal with physical adversity. We have things that go wrong. We live in a broken world. But when it comes right down to it, the true struggle is deeper than that. It's of a spiritual nature. And so when we look at the situations that we're facing, we need to take the time and say, okay, what is causing this? Okay, you have an argument with your spouse. Somebody cuts you off in traffic and you feel enraged, or whatever it is that happens. Instead of focusing on the actual issue, just take a second, step back and say, okay, what is really going on in the spiritual realm right here that is affecting me and is affecting the other person, right? And considering the fact that this is a spiritual warfare situation and I have anxiety going on, I think maybe I should pray. Lord, I just pray for today. Pray that you would speak through me, that you would continue to reveal yourself in me. Lord, that the words that I speak would be from you, but more importantly, that people would hear the message that you have for them, and that I would not get in the way of that message. So if we're fighting a physical battle, we would use physical weapons. But we established that this is a spiritual war, so we need to have spiritual weapons. Okay? You can't fight a spiritual battle with physical weapons because they don't work. So instead of attacking the problem that's facing you with natural means, if you're upset about something, and you're digging deeper and finding out what the spiritual root is, that's the way to truly attack it. So the second foundation that I'd like to lay is the idea that our body is just the part of me that you can see. Okay? And most of that's covered up, so you really can't see me anyways. But the Bible tells us that we're supposed to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, and with all of our strength. So the Bible establishes for us that we are more than just the physical. Okay? The deeper parts of us are actually the parts that influence who we are more than the physical is. Okay? The heart would be our spirit. Okay? Our mind is our emotions, what we're feeling. Our thoughts obviously come from and then mind are our thoughts, and our actions obviously is their strength. So the actions and behaviors that you can see in me are really only the surface of an iceberg, okay? 90% of an iceberg is underwater. So when you think of the Titanic hitting the iceberg, they had built the ship to withstand the ice that was above water. What they didn't do is compensate for the ice that was underwater, and that's what sunk the Titanic. Okay? That's what happens in our lives too. We get sunk by the part of us that we're not aware of, that we're not paying attention to. And also that portion of the person that we're interacting with that's underwater, that we can't see. Look at it this way. Actions, thoughts, emotions, and spirit. You can kind of see that the spirit, who we actually are inside, that is the foundation on which our emotions are built. So who I actually am, what my core values are, what I actually believe affects how I feel. I am feeling anxious right now. The fact that I am feeling anxious tells me that I'm looking for appearances. I'm concerned about people thinking that I'm not doing a good job, right? So I'm insecure in the fact that God is in control of this situation, okay? The thoughts that are going through my mind then, because I'm anxious, are what are people thinking about me? Am I saying things correctly? Am I repeating myself too often? Am I pacing too much? Am I looking at the wrong person? The lights are too bright. And all these other thoughts that are going through my mind because I'm anxious, because I don't think God's in control. Right? And then because I'm thinking all of these things, I'm pacing more, and I'm moving more, I'm looking around more, I'm twitching more. And so you can kind of see that if I was secure in my spirit, if I was established in who I was, my emotions would be more stable, my thoughts would be more stable, my actions would be more stable. That's just a simple example, but that happens in every single area of your life, all day long, every day. Who you are determines what you feel, what you think, and what you do. And you can't change the top without changing the bottom first. You can control your behaviors, but that won't control your thoughts. You can control your thoughts, but that won't control your emotions. You can control your emotions, but that doesn't change who you are. But if you change who you are, it will change all of the others immediately. So I was thinking about the message, and I thought, well, where should I begin? And I've heard that the beginning is a very good place to start. So we're going to start in the beginning. In the beginning, God created everything out of nothing, and it was perfect. God said it was good. It was awesome. The thing about this place that we don't really understand in English is we understand that it was good, we understand that it was beautiful, we understand that it was maybe perfect, but the Hebrew for this place is more than that. It's a shalom, it's a peace, okay? God walked with Adam in the cool of the morning. God was present with him. They were comfortable with each other. There was a wholeness to this situation. So in English, we translate shalom as peace, which means the absence of agitation or discord, the lack of warfare, the lack of conflict. Okay? That is a part of shalom. That is a small portion of shalom. Shalom is a much, much bigger word than that. Shalom includes rest and harmony and tranquility and fullness and welfare and perfection and health and wholeness, soundness, safety, completeness. And these aren't all the things that I can come up with to explain shalom. Shalom is being with God and having nothing between you and God, right? Adam and Eve had literally nothing between them and God because clothes hadn't been invented yet. But not just physically, emotionally. They were open. There was a relationship. They talked, they walked, they communed together. Shalom is that point at which all portions of your life line up with God. Your actions line up with God. Your thoughts line up with God. Your emotions line up with God. And your spirit is in line with God. When that happens, that is shalom. And this is something that can happen now, too. It's not just something that's already gone. It's something that can happen now. And so that's our goal as Christians, is to line up our lives with Christ. So they lived in Eden, and it was good. They had peace. They lived in God's presence. And then sin entered the world, and the perfection was broken. As a result of the brokenness, there's pain and suffering. Your car breaks down. Your friend dies. Your dog dies. You lose your pickup truck, what all the songs are about. Just things suck sometimes. They just do. Your parents said something to you when you were 2 that you've never forgotten, right? Somebody did something to you when you were 10 that's unforgivable. It's a broken place. And so what do we do with this pain that's inside of us? We try to cover it up. We try to hide from it. We try to escape it. Some people turn to drinking. Some people turn to drugs. Some people turn to sex. Some people turn to watching movies. Some people turn to playing computer games. We do different things to cover up this brokenness because we don't know how to handle it. We don't know what to do with it, right? Sometimes we even try to fix it. We go to church and we work at a homeless shelter and we do community service and we try to put a Band-Aid on this massive, massive wound that is not healable. And it doesn't work. Okay? It's just a different way of escaping the pain. There's only one solution for the brokenness, and that's Christ. Christ is the only person that can heal the brokenness. And yet, day after day, minute after minute, we choose to try to find other things to heal the things that hurt us. We try to do things. We build walls between us. We try to we do all sorts of just crazy things that we think are going to make a difference, but they don't, because it's a spiritual issue. It's a spiritual battle that we are trying to fix in a non-spiritual way. And the only way to fix a spiritual problem is with the spiritual solution, and Christ is that only solution to your brokenness. As a result of Christ coming into our lives, assuming that you have Christ in your life, and if you don't, please, please, please come talk to me or one of the other pastors after church, and we would love to help you accept that healing that God can bring. As a result of that healing, we have a responsibility now to go back into the brokenness and heal other people, to bring healing into their lives. And Pastor Dan shared the 3 circles last week. So that's kind of what I've walked you through on this, is just the 3 circles. But the responsibility that we now have is to be Christ's ambassadors. Okay? An ambassador is a person who represents that country in whatever foreign country they happen to go to. Okay? I grew up in Nepal. The ambassador of Nepal was our president, per se. He had the authority of the President of the United States to make decisions in the country of Nepal. Okay? We are Christ's ambassadors in this broken world. He has given us the authority to make scriptural decisions for Him in the areas in which we have been placed. Part of this role is that we need to accurately represent Him. We have a responsibility to become like Him and to understand Him so that the decisions that we make are good ones. If we don't know who God is, if we don't have a good relationship with Him, we're not going to accurately represent Him. We're going to show the people around us a different response than what He would provide. And that's not what we're after. Okay? People should be able to look at you and know that you are a Christian by the way that you treat them and the other people around them. So just a quick to go over those. We're in a spiritual battle. Our inner selves are who we actually are. Our goal is to be fully aligned with God. We are saved by God's grace and God's grace only. Nothing you do can change anything with that. Okay? You can work as hard as you want and you will not get an inch closer to God. It doesn't make a single difference. And we have a responsibility to become as much like Him as possible so that others are drawn to Him to heal them. So that's the foundation that I'd like to lay that I want to build on today. Now, one thing you need to think about when you're hearing this is the fact that I think in pictures. And so have you guys ever looked at like one of those like biology books that has, you flip a page and it has like the skeleton. And then you have another plastic page that you flip over and it puts like the blood vessels over top of the skeleton. And then you flip another page and it puts the muscles on top of it. And you flip another page and it puts the skin on top of it. Okay, that's how my brain works. Okay, so I've got these 5 different layers established. And now God has superimposed a new picture on top of those things that are built on what's underneath. Okay? So if this is a spiritual battle, the question that I have for you is, do you want to be a weekend warrior or do you want to be a Navy SEAL? Do you want to put in what it takes, or are you quite comfortable just getting by, right? Pulling in a paycheck. Would you rather be a starter on the field, actually playing in the game and making a difference? Or are you okay just sitting on the practice squad and showing up once in a while? And be honest with yourself, okay? My point this morning is not to make you feel bad about yourself, okay? My point this morning is to say, that you need to know who you actually are, because that's your core value. Okay? If your core value is that you want to be a warrior, you want to show up, then there's things that you got to do. If your core value is you're okay with just skating by, be honest with yourself and say, this is good enough for me. I don't need to change. I don't need to do anything about it. That's okay. That's on you. When we think about great warriors, who comes to mind? Anybody? No? Pardon? Well, that's where I was going to end up, but come on, man. All right. So the greatest warrior is Christ, right? I mean, especially when we're talking about spiritual battles. But how did he win? What did Christ do to win? Did he kick their butt? Did he go out there and kill all of his enemies? He laid down his life. He sacrificed. From a world's perspective, he lost. Right? From a physical standpoint, Christ got beat. He was killed. From a spiritual standpoint, he annihilated Satan. Completely destroyed his plans. Changed the course of history. Started the healing process for the brokenness. Right? And so we need to look through spiritual eyes and see, okay, if this is how Christ won the battle, and I am fighting a spiritual battle, I need to be like him. So let's find out how Christ fights and then follow him. The thing we need to understand is that the Christian journey is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay? It's not about showing up on Saturdays, or Sundays rather. I guess I grew up where we go to church on Saturday. Showing up on Sundays and maybe Wednesdays, that's a sprint. You show up and you do your quick 2 hours, and then you take a break, right? And then at 3 or 4 more days, you come on Wednesday, or your small group, and then you run for 2 or 3 more hours, and then you take a break. Okay? The Christian life is a marathon. It's a grind. It's hard. Sometimes it's boring. It's a lot of work, and it's not for everybody. If you're okay being a weekend warrior, that's fine. But if you want to be a Navy SEAL, if you want to be on the starting squad, if you want to make a difference, if you want to shake this world, you have to take every minute of your life captive. Okay? Every minute, every hour, you need to be thinking, okay, what am I doing now that honors God? What am I doing now that's making a difference? What am I doing now that has eternal value? And I'm not saying you can't have fun. I'm not saying you can't watch a football game. I like football games. Okay? I'm just saying that you need to be intentional with what is happening in your spirit at all times. We've all heard the story of the tortoise and the hare, but let me tell you about a true story about this farmer in Australia named Young. Okay? Young was actually 61 years old, so he wasn't actually young anymore. He showed up for an ultra marathon. Went from Sydney down, anyways, it is across the east coast of Australia. 544 miles. I can't imagine running that far. Well, he had heard there was a race, and so he just showed up. It wasn't invited. I mean, it was kind of open invitation, so he just showed up to run this thing. And he showed up in his overalls, and he showed up in his gumboots. For those of you who don't know what gumboots are, they're rubber. Well, you'd use them on a farm when you're mucking a stall or something like that. Just kind of rubber boots, right? That's what he showed up in. No shorts, no T-shirts, no running clothes, no running shoes, no water bottles, no nothing. He just showed up. And they fired the gun. Everybody started running and just took off, left him in the dust. And he just kept running. And it wasn't even a run. It was kind of a lope. They said that he averaged about 6.5 miles an hour, which I can walk 4.5 to 5 if I'm really, really going. So it's just a little bit faster than a walk. But he didn't stop. So everybody else stopped for eating and for taking, they slept, a couple hours, and then they'd start running again, and they'd sleep for a couple hours and run again. He just kept going. And he ran, and he ran, and he ran. Took him 5 days, 15 hours, and 4 minutes to go 544 miles. He destroyed the record by 2 days. 2 days he beat the record by 2 days because he didn't stop. That is crazy. What's kind of even crazier is he didn't know that there was a prize for winning the race. I think it was in the late 80s that it happened, and they gave him $10,000, which that's a lot of money now, but it was a lot more back then. He didn't know there was a prize. There were 5 other guys that finished the race. There were 6 guys that finished the race total. He just gave the money to everybody else. He said, I don't need it. I just came to run the race. He gave the money away. That's pretty amazing. Anyways, I just think that he's inspirational because that's kind of what we want to do. We want to just keep going. We want to keep moving. We want to keep plodding along. Take the next step and take the next step and take the next step. Make sure you're running in the right direction, but make sure you just show up however you are right now. If you're headed in the right direction, if God needs to change you, he will change you, but you have to show up. So Amy and I are part of a ministry organization called Rejoice Ministries International. It's a ministry of encouragement. It's a ministry of reconciliation. And Dick Dungan is the founder of the ministry. And he has a saying that the kingdom of God flows along the lines of relationship. First vertically, and then horizontally, and together it makes a cross. Okay? If you're around him for any time, you'll hear it. Okay? And so this has kind of gotten ingrained in us, is this idea that we need to be intentional with our relationships because that's how the kingdom of God is built, is through our relationships. But first, we need to be established with Christ. So, with RMI, with Rejoice Ministries International, we have sabbaticals. And so we try to practice the idea of spiritual Sabbath. We get away and we disconnect from everything and get alone with God. We have some direction that kind of gives some guidance. We have some worship times and stuff like that. Kind of like a men's retreat or a women's retreat, but a lot more intentional, a lot more personal time for seeking God's presence. During that time, we're asked to hear God's voice and see if he wants to speak anything into your life. Some people ask God for a specific word or a specific revelation for that year, and then they focus in on whatever that revelation is for the next 12 months until we have another sabbatical, at which point that they ask for a new word, and sometimes God gives them the same word to look over again because they didn't learn it the first time. But this year, as I was on a sabbatical in Georgia, I think it was in March, God gave me the word channel. Okay, God, like TV channel, radio channel, what are we talking about, God? And so I'm thinking, okay, maybe, you need to have the dial just right so that you can hear God clearly. Okay, that's probably it, or I need to have it set on the right channel so that I'm watching the right things because there's some shows that are appropriate and some shows that aren't. I'm thinking about what channels are we talking about? What channels are we talking about? And it's not clicking for me. And God gave me this clear picture, just like so in Nepal, they didn't have electricity. I didn't have electricity until I was like 10. I grew up out in the boonies. And everything's either water-powered or solar-powered or animal-powered or human-powered. And they build these aqueducts, and then they have a log that's hollowed out, the top cut out of it, a channel that like runs down and it goes into a water mill. There's a fan on the bottom that turns by the force of the water, okay? And then the two rocks rotate and they grind food. So he gave me this picture of the log that's coming off of the aqueduct and shooting into the water mill. That was my picture. He said, "This is what I mean when I say channel." Okay, so now I'm kind of understanding that God's talking about wanting me to be a channel. Not talking about me trying to figure out the channel. He says, you are the channel. So I'm thinking about this, and he shows me that I am the channel of peace and grace. His peace and grace. He's the source. I'm the channel, and it's going to somebody else. I'm not a very good artist. I tried to find a picture on the internet that wasn't copyrighted, and I couldn't. So I'll just show you what I drew in my journal, and you'll have to try not to laugh. But you can kind of see, this is where the aqueduct ends right here. And then there's a log. And, I've got some knots that are knocked out. I got some cracks and stuff like that. But I've got water coming from the aqueduct and going out the end of the channel. And then God told me that I need to, you guys can't read my handwriting. So I need to reduce restrictions. I need to reduce friction. I need to reduce leaks. I need to improve range. And I need to improve accuracy. So this is what God has assigned for me to learn this year. And I've gotten through the first two so far, I think, or I'm getting to them. And so that's what I'm actually going to share with you today, is I think we're all supposed to be channels of God's grace and peace to those around us. Okay? So I'd like to see what we can do to reduce the restrictions in our life that keep us from passing that along. Okay? Vertically first, right? So Christ is our source. That's the first point to all of this, is you have to have Christ as the source. If you're seeking peace, if you're seeking love, if you're seeking grace, happiness, anything like that from anywhere other than God, the cross piece isn't going to work because you don't have the vertical in place. Okay? So you have to have the source established first before you can be helpful this way. We need relationships where love and care can grow. Okay? So if you don't have a relationship with somebody, you can't care for them, you can't love them, you can't grow with them. Kind of a duh factor, I know, but that's where it starts. But you also need to have relationships in order for the grace and love to flow, because part of a relationship is a give and take. Okay? So for flowing to happen, there needs to be movement. Dan preached last week about a gentle and patient a spirit, and that kind of ties into this. Is with grace, it has this aspect of pleasure and delight and goodwill and favor and loving kindness and thanks and gratitude and reward, and it goes on and on and on. Kind of like Shalom had like 20 words that explained it. Grace is one of those words. When we translate it into English, when you translate charis into English, some passages translate it as grace, some translate it as pleasure, some translate it as favor, some thanksgiving. I mean, we say grace before a meal when we're actually saying thank you. So even in English we do this. But as a general rule, we don't think of these other interpretations when we think of grace. Grace is, in effect, love working itself out in our lives. When love comes into your life, how does it go out of you and into somebody else? That's what grace is. Grace is God's love that was poured out on us while we still didn't deserve it. It comes into us and it saves us. And as a result of saving us, it now transforms us into channels that then can pass that love on to the people that we come in contact with. When we are full of grace, those are the points where we fully accept God's love. Okay? So as far as restrictions in our life, some people, especially if they've had a hard background, don't feel loved. They feel unlovable. They feel like, woe is me, I've messed up too much. There's no way God can love me, right? And that's a lie from the pit of hell. Paul says that he says that God saved him who was the greatest sinner, right? Not was, is. He uses the word is. I am the greatest sinner. So even after he was saved, he still saw that sin in his life, that he had the capability of that, right? So to be full of grace, you have to accept the love that God is giving you. Once you have accepted that love, you can't hold on to it. If you hold on to it, you're not full of grace because it's not moving. It has to go out from you to somebody else for there to be movement. Having grace in our lives makes us more loving and forgiving. Okay? If you're not more thankful, if you are not necessarily happy, if you're not full of joy, then you probably aren't experiencing grace. Because a result of feeling loved is that you will have a positive attitude. Okay? So that's kind of one of those checks when we at the beginning when I talked about the spirit is the foundation or the core value, and your emotions is a reflection on what you actually believe in your spirit. If you are depressed, if you are anxious, if you're fearful, you're probably not letting that love truly establish itself in your spirit level. You've accepted it in your mind. Maybe you've accepted it in some of your emotions, but you haven't let it get into the foundation of who you actually are. And the big one is that grace allows us to live in freedom. And if you're not free, if you're feeling bound up, then you definitely need to investigate what's going on with your acceptance of God's love. Unfortunately, when God pours grace into our lives, we often are reluctant to pass it on. So God loves me, and I've got that, okay? I've gotten past the hurdle of the fact that I'm unlovable. I've gotten past the hurdle of the fact that I'm a sinner, and now I'm accepting God's love. But I find it hard to love so-and-so, My husband doesn't treat me right, or that guy stole my car, or whatever the case may be. It makes it hard for me to love somebody else because we don't understand the magnitude of the grace that we have been given, right? Think of yourself being dropped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, okay? Nobody's around. You're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If you don't do anything, you're going to sink and drown. If you start swimming, you'll make a little bit of headway. You'll stay afloat. You're not going to make it to land, ever. The only way to make it to land is if somebody saves you. That's what Christ did for us. He brought us to shore. He brought us to a firm foundation. Took us out of the ocean, brought us to land. Okay? Do we have a responsibility to keep swimming, to stay alive? Absolutely. Okay? But you can't do it on your own. The gap is only made when Christ helps us. The problem is we judge others. And the Bible is clear that we are to make judgments. Okay? I'm not saying that you can't make judgments. We are to make judgments. The problem is that we are judgmental. And do you guys understand the difference? Making a judgment call is saying this is right and this is wrong. Being judgmental is presupposing that somebody is a certain way because of something that you see. Two completely different things. One affects the heart and the other one does not. Okay? Being judgmental comes from your heart because you have a presupposition that the other person is either better than you or less than you. Okay? You are judging them based on non-factual information. The thing is, we don't want to be judged that way. We don't want to be judged by the 10% that everybody can see. We want to be judged by all of us, including the 90% that nobody can see. But the only way to do that is if we have a relationship. You're not going to find out what I feel, what I think, what I'm like inside unless you get to know me, unless we have a relationship, right? We like to judge others, but we really want grace. We want you to judge me based on everything, including all of the extenuating circumstances that I have to back up why I'm annoying and irritating, right? So I want to be judged on grace. I want you to have grace on me, but I don't want to have grace on you. That is our default setting, okay? Everybody does it. Even Pastor Ray does it, okay? We need to be graceful because the Bible says that we will be judged in the same way that we judge others. If you want to be judged in grace, then you need to be graceful to other people. We almost have this entitlement, like I deserve grace. If you've been in the church long enough, this just happens. It's like, yeah, I deserve grace. You just kind of take it for granted. And that's not a good place. We've become theologians instead of practitioners. We understand grace. We understand the fact that it's by Christ's grace alone that we're saved, but we still feel like we have to earn it, right? They say that the furthest distance in the universe is 18 inches, right? From your brain to your heart. And so just look at your life and see whether what you think you believe actually matches what's in your spirit. Because it's what's in your spirit that actually counts, because that's what releases the love into other people's lives. Somebody said that we receive love in buckets from God, but then we turn around and only hand it out in teaspoons, right? You deserve this much, and you deserve this much, and you deserve... He pours it into us, but we're really reluctant to give it out. And so I guess my encouragement is to increase the capacity, the flow capacity of that grace through your life. Because the more grace you show to other people, the more love that you pass on to other people, the more forgiveness you pass on to other people, the more you will receive. You can't fill a space with more if you don't have space being built up in front of it. Okay? So Jesus told a parable about a guy who owed millions and millions and millions of dollars. And he went in and he said, "Hey, I can't pay the debt. I'm sorry." And the guy that represents God in this situation said, "That's fine. I'll forgive your debt." Right? Awesome grace. That guy then turns around and goes to somebody else that only owes him a couple $100 and says, "Pay me now." Does that sound like grace? That's what we do. And it's the default setting in our lives. So just recognize that, and as you go through the day, look and see if that is happening to you. Are you being graceful to each person that you're encountering? The other thing that we do is we don't understand that grace isn't ours. The love isn't ours. Okay? One of the words that I had several years ago in my RMI retreats was the idea of provision. And so I started out the year thinking, okay, God's my provider, Jehovah Jireh, just all these things about God providing for me and stuff like that. By the end of the year, I realized what he actually was teaching me was that he owns everything, right? And I don't just mean your car and your house. He owns your kids. He owns your life. You have literally nothing that is actually yours. You might think it's yours, but it's not yours. Okay? Grace is one of these things. It's not ours. He gave it to us for the purpose of passing it on to somebody else. And so why are we trying to control something that's not even ours? We're supposed to be giving it away. The problem is that we try to control things. And control comes with an issue of trust. People that don't trust try to control. Okay? It's just human nature. We try to establish our own security by controlling our environment or the people around us. And we do that. In the spiritual realm as well, we try to apply that, and it doesn't work. So this is my life verse. God gave it to me when I was little, and he's kind of developed layers of this for me over the years. James 4:17 says, if you know what you should do, and you don't do it, it's sin. Okay? And so from a young kid, man, I want to say I was maybe a young teenager when God gave me this verse. It started out as feeling like an obligation. Oh man, God's going to hold me accountable, so I have to do this and I have to do that. Which, there is some concept of that here, but it's more than that. This is just being aware of what's right and wrong. This is aware of being sensitive to what's going on in the spiritual realm. One of the biggest places that this shows up in human relationships is, let's say that God tells me to get up in the middle of the night. Our kids are older now. When Lydia was a baby, let's say Lydia is crying in the middle of the night. I have this impression, I wake up, and I think I should go get Lydia and see if there's something that I can do for Lydia so that Amy can sleep. Okay? This is a thought that goes through my mind. I know what I should do. I should get up and go take care of the baby so my wife can sleep. Okay? Instead, I start thinking, man, I got to get up early to go to work. And, she's just been sitting around all day and doing nothing. And so what I start doing is I start justifying myself. I start making myself look better. I'm such a hard worker. I provide for my family, right? And I start making her look really bad. Like, man, she's just lazy. She doesn't want to get up. If she really loved me, she would take care of the kid so that I could sleep, right? So as soon as we don't do what we're supposed to do, we start justifying our behavior, and we start villainizing the person that God told us to actually help. Okay? It's automatic reaction. We have to protect ourselves, so we have to make the other person look bad, and we have to make ourselves look good. So just think about that. When you're in a relationship and there's somebody that you're not getting along with, was there something that God told you to do for that person that you decided not to do? If there's somebody in your life that is just an absolute jerk in your mind, right? They're just an absolute jerk. Why do you think they're a jerk? Is it because you are not seeing things clearly? And I tell you what, this eats up marriages every single day. Every single day, marriages are broken up because they have stopped looking out for each other. And they've started making the other person look worse than they actually are. And they've started thinking that they are way better than they actually are. Absolute relationship killer. Corinthians says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly in my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." It's not about being strong. It's not about having all the right answers. In fact, that's the point at which God can actually work in your life, is when you are weak, when you are broken, because then He's the only one that gets the glory out of it. People have an innate need to know other people and to be fully known by them. But in order for this to happen, we have to be transparent with each other. You have to be completely honest. You have to be completely open. You have to be completely vulnerable. We like to build walls to protect ourselves, but that's not what the walls do. What the walls do is they keep everybody out. Okay? Openness and vulnerability is the only way for love to flow through your life and into other people. If you have walls in your life, if you are keeping yourself from being hurt because you think that the other person that you don't even know properly is going to hurt you, then you have a hard heart, and God can't work with that. You have to break it down. You have to ask Him to take it away so that you can be open and vulnerable and allow God's grace to flow through you. We sang about amazing grace, right? We sang about the fact that your chains are gone. When you are living with bitterness, when you are living with anger, with fear, with resentment, those are all chains that are wrapped around your heart that keep you from accepting God's love, and they absolutely keep you from passing it on to other people. Grace will break those chains and will free you to love others. We're a body, and we're all supposed to work together. And there's only two ways that grace can flow through you. Either you are receiving it or you are giving it. And you have to be open to both things happening. If you are too prideful to receive it, that's a blockage. If you are too prideful to give it away, that's a blockage. Okay? And so that's where I'm at, guys. That's what I'm working on in my life. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I'm doing in my life, what God is telling me to do. And I'm hoping that maybe He's telling you the same thing, because I think as a body, we're supposed to learn things together. We're supposed to learn things from each other. And together, we're supposed to bring the kingdom of God to those around us. First, established vertically for our source, and then horizontally to the people in our community.